DocTalk is brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.
Hey folks, thanks for joining me on DocTalk today. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson, and we're going to talk about something that we deal with on farms. It's mortality, and not necessarily how or why the animals died, but how we're going to get rid of the mortalities when they occur. Many different situations that occur out there. It's a very serious topic. Stay tuned.
As dependable as the sunrise, in dairy parlors, open pastures, on ranches and feed yards across America, a place where reputation is more than a name, where the science of healthier animals is a way of life. It's the responsibility that drives who we are and what we do. Every decision, every day. It's your livelihood and our responsibility.
Closed caption brought to you by AgriLabs, the perfect pairing of performance and value.
This segment brought to you by the new Hired Hand Portable Cow Sprayer. For more information, visit cowsprayer.com.
Hey folks, Dr. Dan here. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to talk about removal of mortalities at the farm, ranch, dairy, swine operation, whatever. And it's one of those things that different situations dictate. Now, every once in a while, we will have an animal, about 4% to 5% of the cattle in the beef industry die annually. And so it could be a pre-weaning mortality rate, it could be a calf that dies at weaning due to BRD, it could be a cow that succumbed to a winter storm or lightning strike, or different reasons that we may have a mortality occur. You know, it's just like, it's no different than in the human population. So when we start to think about mortalities and when they occur on the farm and ranch, there are some things that we have to consider. And the first one I go to is the number of mortalities and the time of the year. And when I start to think about an individual death or an individual episode that occurs sporadically on the farm, you know, it's something that's a natural occurrence. The other one is to start to think about when I have and maybe an irregular rate of mortality. Maybe I have more mortalities than expected. You know, it might be time that we make sure we get a necropsy on the farm, get a veterinarian out there, make sure that we're just double checking that this is something that's kind of a fluke in nature or something that's expected in nature and not some sort of disease or toxin outbreak on our farm. And then the last one I start to think about are the catastrophic weather events. When we have the 100-year flood, or if we've had big snowstorms or blizzards where we'll have animals that will die in larger numbers due to being caught in the middle of a winter storm, whether it's out on natural pasture, whether it's in feedlot situations, in dairy situations, things that we have to be prepared for. And so when we start to think about the different ways that are legal to remove deads from a facility, which the four are rendering, incinerating, burying, or composting, how do we start to make that decision on your farm or ranch as to which way that we're going to remove these deads? Not only will the situation of how many and how close together when we have the dead cattle or mortalities occur, but the other one might be how old the animal is. And when we start talking about mad cow disease or our firewall prevention programs, there are sometimes that we have difficulty in animals that die that are older than 30 months of age being placed into rendering situations. So then you start to limit yourself on the different possibilities that you could have to get rid of the mortalities. Incineration is something that we use commonly in small animal and in human death. We very rarely use incineration for the removal of mortalities in livestock situations because of the expense and because of the logistics of moving those animals around. When we start to think about incineration, it's really not a practical opportunity for us in the beef industry or dairy industry or swine industry. We use it in research setting for large animals, but again, we're basically not going to be able to afford that. So when we come back, we're going to talk about rendering, we're going to talk about burial, and we're going to talk about composting of deads. We'll also talk a little bit about scavenger death loss removal as well. Thanks for watching Doc Talk, and we'll be back after these messages.
This Meet the Future Veterinarian is brought to you by Zuprevo. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Holt Tripp, a Kentucky native, is a fourth-year student at Oklahoma State University Center for Veterinary Health Sciences. He is pursuing a dual DVM MBA program. After graduation, Holt hopes to own and operate a diversified research and consulting practice specializing in feedlot and stocker cattle production systems.
Some call it a come-from-behind victory, an unlikely win, a reversal of fortune, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. This is our moment, our victory dance, because we choose confidence. We choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Ask your veterinarian to prescribe Zuprevo. Zuprevo is a fast-acting, long-lasting BRD treatment that you can count on to get the job done. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo from Merck Animal Health.
Healthy cows start with the new hired hand automatic livestock sprayer. Rancher invented to provide an efficient alternative to pour-on and injectable parasite management systems. The portable design allows cattle to treat themselves head to hoof. Strategic device placement with pass-through activation technology takes the stress out of parasite treatment for cattle and the rancher. Get the new hired hand for yourself or become a distributor. Visit cowsprayer.com. The new hired hand makes healthy cows easy.
Calves require adequate, high-quality colostrum immediately following birth to receive the immune and nutritional support needed to fight diseases and thrive. Next-generation Colostrix colostrum replacer and supplement are USDA licensed to aid in the treatment of failure of passive transfer and contain natural maternal bovine colostrum antibodies against E. coli K99. Ask your animal health supplier for Colostrix or visit agrilabs.com for details. Colostrix makes all systems go.
Hey there, welcome back to Doc Talk. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine, and we're talking about removal of mortalities, removal of dead cows or calves from your ranch or feedlot. And one of the things that we have to think about is neighbor nuisance, okay? When we have a mortality, a lot of times we will take that animal and we'll drag that animal out to the road and put it in the ditch so that when the rendering truck comes by, they can just pick up the animal and leave. And that is really good for biosecurity. The big thing you have to be aware of is make sure that the rendering truck has been notified and that they're going to actually come. Because dragging the animal out to the side of the road is not good advertisement for your farm or ranch. It's not good advertisement for the beef industry in general. So make sure that we have that timed if we're going to use rendering. Now, let's start to think about the potential environmental and biosecurity of a mortality and associate that with our three or four ways of getting rid of mortalities on the farm. When we start to think about rendering, burying, composting, or scavenging. And so when we think about the legal ways and the safest ways of decreasing environmental or biosecurity contamination, the quickest and most efficient way of having that animal removed off your premise is having it picked up by the rendering company within 48 hours. So that animal is removed off the premise, it goes to a rendering plant, and we don't have the concern of the potential of disease transmission from that animal on your ranch. The next one is the second safest option is burial. The problem with burial is some of the environmental regulations that can come along with that, and we'll talk about those as we go. The next one would be composting. It's something that's above ground, but the animals are covered, and they're composting, and so we're having good bacterial fermentation that actually outcompetes the pathogenic or bad bacteria when this animal or this carcass is composted. And then the one that has the highest level of risk for disease transmission on the farm or for breach of biosecurity is when we have what we call scavenge. And that's when we'll take the animal out to by the wood pile or put the animal in a draw, and we'll allow coyotes or whatever to scavenge off of that animal, consume the tissue of that animal, and the animal is left out there to decompose and to be consumed by wildlife, which then those animals can harbor or potentially spread the disease on your farm ranch. So just think about, when we think about the differences, ones that you're going to pick of the ones that are available, rendering, burial, composting, or scavenging, that there is an innate risk of some sort of biosecurity or disease breach on your farm or ranch, and the lowest risk is when we use rendering, but rendering isn't always available. So we've gone from incinerating the animals to rendering, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about burial and composting of animals on your farm and ranch. You're watching DocTalk. Thanks for joining us today. More after these messages.
The BQA Tip of the Day, sponsored by Beringer Engelheim Vetmedica, Inc.
Hello, this is Shane Terrell with Production Animal Consultation here with today's BQA Tip of the Day. Today we're going to talk about proper handling of feedstuffs. Ideally, these feedstuffs are going to be stored in a place where they can be under cover, away from moisture and other inclement weather. If we do have exposed feed, don't grind up any more roughage than what we can use in a 5 to 7 day time period to prevent those feeds from accumulating moisture and molding and having other issues associated with clumping. On high moisture corn or other silage type of feedstuffs that are highly fermentable, make sure that we only knock down enough feed that we can feed in a single day on those highly fermentable feedstuffs.
Say this is a calf that's been run through the chute a few too many times. Going through the chute stresses cattle, causing them not to eat like they should. Luckily, Pyramid 5 plus Presponse SQ provides proven protection against key respiratory diseases in a single shot, with just one trip through the chute. Talk to your veterinarian about Pyramid 5 plus Presponse SQ, and soon your calves will relax and eat like a whole different animal.
No matter where, no matter why, the Veterinary Health Center at Kansas State University is committed to providing quality patient care to animals and exceptional customer service to their owners. From routine checkups to emergency and specialty care, our world-renowned specialists and experienced professionals are here to discover, to teach, and to heal.
Let us know.
How can I help?
How can we help?
Broadband has become as important to us as highways. That is why DocTalk is teaming up with NTCA, the Rural Broadband Association, and rural broadband companies like Blue Valley Telecommunications in fighting for quality broadband access through the program Smart Rural Communities.
I don't think we have any idea what's coming in the future. I couldn't have imagined 5 years ago what we're doing today. So in 2 years, I would guess there's things we can't imagine that we're going to be doing.
To learn more, visit ntca.org/smart or bluevalley.net. Beef producers asked for it, and the wait is over. Enroflox 100 Enrofloxacin from Norbrook, now approved for single-dose treatment and control of bovine respiratory disease. With the same active ingredient and dosing regimen as Baytril 100 in beef and non-lactating dairy cattle. Choose Enroflox 100 when looking for an injectable antimicrobial solution to treat and control BRD. Observe label directions and withdrawal times. See product labeling for full product information, including warnings and precautions. Consult your veterinarian to see if Enroflox 100 is right for your cattle. Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
True Test Group, Weighing systems, electronic identification, EID, electric fencing, and dairy automation systems help farmers and ranchers around the world manage the performance of their livestock for ultimate profitability.
Thanks for coming back to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson here at the College of Veterinary Medicine at Kansas State University, where I serve as the Jones Professor of Production Medicine and Epidemiology in the Department of Pathobiology and Diagnostic Medicine. So what we want to talk about today is mortality disposal on the farm. And we've talked about how we can't incinerate the animals because of cost and logistics. Rendering is a great option, and we want to do it quickly, especially if it's in the summer. We're going to do it quickly because the animals decompose faster than they do in the winter. So it's of utmost importance that we get those animals taken care of in a very short time period. Now, sometimes out in the country, we've had difficulties with rendering companies picking up animals that are greater than 30 months of age. And the reason why they don't pick up those animals, those cows, greater than 30 months of age, is because of the biosecurity or biocontainment rules and regulations that we have put in place to prevent the spread of mad cow disease, whether it winds up on our dinner plate or whether it winds up in pet food. So when we start to think about this, we start to have plans B and C beyond rendering when the rendering company has decided they aren't going to pick up those animals that are greater than 30 months. A lot of times burial seems like the easiest answer and the one that would be the least expensive and the least amount of headache. When you think about burying an animal, the first thing you need to make sure that you're in compliance with are your environmental policies, whether it's state or local. Make sure you get with the environmental agencies and have your bases covered to make sure you're doing it within the legal confines of your state and local laws. The other thing that you need to think about, some of the just general logistic things about burying an animal. You want to make sure that you're at least 100 foot away from wells or from sinkholes or from different types of areas where there's a lot of moisture that's trapped. The other thing is make sure you don't bury animals in permeable soil. It kind of makes common sense that we don't want things leaching out into the soil that might leach into our water system or that would go to cattle or go back to the house. Okay, so think about those. We want to bury animals completely. We want to make sure that animals can't scavenge. They can't come in and scavenge on the mortality. So a lot of times we recommend that you go at least 6 foot deep. But when you go 6 foot deep, one of the things you have to remember about not just on the top of the burial, but think about what's underneath. So we want to make sure that we have at least 2 foot of bedrock underneath that animal. We want to be away from the water table and be above the water table when we bury these animals. A lot of things that we don't think of when we just go out and drop the backhoe or we drop the loader bucket and we start digging. The other thing that's going to be associated with burying these animals is make sure you're at least 100, 200, 300 foot off your neighbor's property line. Okay, and if you don't know where your property line is and you're going to bury an animal, it's something you probably better make sure that you're on your property and use the GPS that you can go ahead and lay out the boundaries and you can mark where you've buried animals in the past on your farm or ranch. So when we come back, we've talked about the other methods. We're going to come back, we're going to talk about composting. It's probably one of the easiest and least regulated ways to get rid of a dead animal on your farm or ranch, and we're going to talk about it when we come back.
The BQA Tip of the Day, sponsored by Beringer Engelheim Vetmedica, Inc.
I'm Dr. Kip Lukasevich with Production Animal Consultation. Today's BQA Tip of the Day is bud box facilities. We're at a feed yard today that has a bud box. It's becoming more and more popular. The advantage of the bud box is that it's a facility that has open sides. It has one solid side, which is the gate, which they come in through. But it takes advantage of cattle's natural behavior in that cattle like to see what's pressuring them and they like to return where they came from. And so the way our alley is set up is so that the cattle come into the box first and they make a turn and they come back around and then they go right down into the double feed alley and they go straight, which cattle prefer. The advantage of the bud box is that if we have one that is giving us problems going into the alley, and sometimes that happens, we have a gate here that we can swing and bring around to narrow that up and have him go in. And if we have one that is kind of ornery and doesn't want to cooperate with us that way, we can easily come through here and come through the gate and work from the outside. And if we need to, we can have a flag or something that we can utilize to work from the outside and have the cattle come in as well. Both ways work really well, and that's how you stay safe working in a bud box.
Healthy cows start with the new hired hand automatic livestock sprayer. Rancher invented to provide an efficient alternative to pour-on and injectable parasite management systems. The portable design allows cattle to treat themselves head to hoof. Strategic device placement with pass-through activation technology takes the stress out of parasite treatment for cattle and the rancher. Get the new hired hand for yourself or become a distributor. Visit cowsprayer.com. The new hired hand makes healthy cows easy.
This hog is head over hoof for meal made from U.S. soybeans. Now, one hog isn't that impressive, but suppose we add another, and another, and another. Before long, you've got billions of hungry customers around the world all clamoring for the same thing. Our soybeans. Learn more about the billion-dollar appetite of animal agriculture at BeyondTheElevator.com. Brought to you by America's soybean farmers and their checkoff.
Hello friends, I'm Ernie Rodina.
And I'm Dawn Dawson with the Better Horses Radio Show.
For over 9 years, we've been bringing the Better Horses Radio Show to markets all across the Midwest. We talk about God, lots about horses.
We talk about cows, we talk about horse health, we talk to top trainers, and we even talk about Roy Rogers.
We are having a blast with Better Horses Radio Show and would love to take it to a market near you.
So visit our website at betterhorsesradio.com and let us or your local radio station know you'd like to hear it in your area.
The Better Horses Radio Show is unbelievable.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson here from Kansas State University. We're talking about mortality disposal. And when we think about compost and we think about eggshells and lettuce and kitchen surplus put into something that smells bad and then you take it out to the garden, right? Well, composting out in the field is pretty odorless when it's done appropriately or done correctly, and it's something that's pretty easy to do. If you have dried manure from cattle in a confinement operation or from being locked up close to the barn, or horse manure or some sort of carbon source, you can compost mortalities. And the general premise is that when we have composting, we're going to create an environment of carbon and nitrogen, the carbon source being the dried manure or straw or leaves or even, old grain, things to that nature that you can mix together to provide a carbon source that surrounds that mortality to digest it through bacterial fermentation and composting and turnover of using lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, the good bacteria, to help digest the tissues and the bones of these mortalities. So you go out, we find some dried manure, whether like horse manure or cattle manure, and we're going to make a 2-foot bed of that dried manure. We don't want to use wet manure because wet manure won't allow aerobic fermentation. It will seal that, it will dry, it will form a case, and you'll have an anaerobic fermentation, which I will promise you, if you do it once, you'll never do it again. You do not want to have this happen. So we use dried manure, a 2-foot base of dried manure. We lay the mortality on top of it. Now you want to use your knife because there's a lot of good bacteria that are located in the rumen of those animals. And so we're going to utilize Mother Nature's tools and bacteria, and you will just poke that rumen with a knife so that it opens up and exposes those bacteria to the carbon source. Now that animal, once it's laid flat on that 2-foot bed, we will go and get more of the dried manure, straw mixture. Chicken litter is also good, and we'll entomb this animal in a 2-foot tomb all the way around, where we will have the air that will come in at the bottom, and we will cause this fermentation. The pile will heat up. How long does it take? Within about 90 days, you can go out and actually turn that pile over to kind of increase the fermentation and increase the composting of the mortality, but the only thing you're going to be left with at 90 days are going to be a few of the bones. It's a very effective way. Make a 2-foot tomb, dried material. If it's too dry, it won't ferment, but you can tell whether it's fermenting with some of these composting thermometers. We'll get up to 140, 150 degrees Fahrenheit, indicating proper composting has been done. And again, really does not smell, and it's a very effective way to get rid of the dead. If you want to know more about composting, email us. You can find us on the web at www.doctalktv.com. Remember, always work with your local veterinarian. We appreciate you watching this show today. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson, and I'll see you down the road.
Closed caption brought to you by AgriLabs, the perfect pairing of performance and value.
For more information about this program or previous programs, go to DocTalkTV.com. DocTalk was brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.